911, where's your emergency?
Someone is a robber at a pawn shop.
Someone's robbing the pawn shop?
And my parents got shot.
Where is the robber?
He's right here right now.
Where are your parents?
They're dead on the ground. Come here quickly because I'm afraid.
Case of Andrew Hockensmith, Chapter 1, A Picturesque Life. The boy you see here is 9-year-old Andrew Hockensmith. 1 hour before this footage was recorded, Andrew was living a happy life with a loving and supportive family. His parents, Michael and Angie, were the owners of a local pawn shop in Danville, Kentucky. They had just welcomed a new member to their family, baby Naomi. Andrew was so happy to be a big brother and loved his baby sister more than anything in the world. But on September 20th, 2013, the family's life took a disturbing turn for the worse when the 9-year-old boy heard gunshots and screams. Chapter 2, A Tight-Knit Family. The year is 2013 in the quiet town of Danville, Kentucky. Andrew Hockensmith lives a happy life with his father, Michael, his mother, Angie, and his 13-month-old sister, Naomi. When Andrew's father first met his wife, Angie, it was love at first sight. Angie was a sweet, kind-hearted young woman, and she was Michael's first true love. They were deeply in love and shared a strong religious faith. Michael worked as a part-time youth pastor in the area. They were both very active in their church and very well known in the community. However, Michael's role as a youth pastor did not provide enough income to support the family. They needed another source of income. That's when a friend in the church community and another religious leader, Pastor Alan Keith, had an interesting proposition for Andrew's father, Michael Hockensmith. Mike and Angie both looked up to Alan, and Andrew saw Mr. Keith as an uncle. Pastor Keith, a well-known religious figure in the area, preached in multiple churches about the Word of God. And on the side, Pastor Keith had a unique side business, running and owning pawn shops. Usually, pastors and pawn shops don't necessarily go together, but Keith was different. He was buying precious metals, videos, CDs, and things of that sort. Between that and the Bible, that was his life. Pastor Keith loved God and preached every Sunday throughout Pulaski County. He also loved money, particularly gold. Chapter 3, A New Opportunity. Through Pastor Keith's leadership and guidance, Mike joined the business himself and started to work at ABC Gold Games and more pawn shop. With a new business rolling and the arrival of baby Naomi, life was good for the Hockensmiths, who genuinely enjoyed spending quality time together. Angie and Mike even made the decision to homeschool young Andrew so that the family could stay close even during the day. Each morning, Andrew, his parents, and baby Naomi all hung out in the family's pawn shop. The pawn shop was basically my home, Andrew would later recall. We had all the knickknacks of a pawn shop, from games to movies to all sorts of junk. It was basically a playground. I absolutely loved it. It was simply amazing. Chapter 4, The Day Everything Changed. But things took a disturbing turn for the worse on September 20th, 2013. At 9:17 a.m., a 911 dispatcher in Kentucky took a call. On the other line, a young boy's quiet voice told him about an ongoing robbery in Danville. 9-year-old Andrew Hockensmith pleaded with the operator for help. The dispatcher tried to get as much information as possible, but then he heard something even more unsettling, a baby crying. Andrew and baby Naomi had to remain silent, as any noise could easily alert their location to the robber, who was still lurking in the shop. Right away, the 911 operator dispatched the patrol unit. While the terrified 9-year-old stayed on the line, officers hurried to the scene, unaware of what they were about to face. Within only 6 minutes, officers arrived at the scene. Aware of the urgency of the situation, Authorities attempted to open the front door of the store, but it was locked, so they broke the glass and forced their way in. Chapter 5. The horrific scene. As I made entry, all I was thinking about was, is the shooter still here? One officer later recounted. The first thing that the officer noticed was a huge smear of blood to his right in the lobby area of the store. I don't care how many times you've done it or seen it, there's nothing that truly prepares you for this. Their worst fears were confirmed when they discovered 3 bodies lying on the floor. Not knowing if the killer was still inside, they quickly cleared the scene, looking for the 9-year-old caller. Guided by the dispatcher, there was a sigh of relief when the officers found the 2 young children still hiding. Both of them were directly taken to the police station, terrified but physically unharmed. Chapter 6. The investigation begins. Back at the pawn shop, cops and detectives filled up the store while a forensic scientist started to examine the bodies. It was a difficult scene to analyze since the store was selling guns and ammunition, making it harder to identify what was a clue and what wasn't. The first female body was lying near the register. The second one, a male victim, was on the other side of the counter. A trace of blood led to the third victim, another male, in the back. One of the bodies had been moved to a location where if someone peered into the front door, they wouldn't be able to see that body. Chapter 7. Unraveling the mystery. The victims had been shot multiple times, possibly after they were down. The only thing at that time that they could determine was that the spent casings appeared to be from a .22 caliber weapon. Andrew's paternal and maternal grandmothers, Charlene and Barbara, rushed to the crime scene, wanting to make sure their family was safe and also understand what had happened. From a distance, they could see yellow tape behind the cop cars, and as they approached the pawn shop, more and more officers prevented them from going further. And the policemen would not let us up to the shop. They said, "You cannot go in." Well, I just broke down at that point. I knew they were gone, and my heart just sunk. I just couldn't understand why. What had they done so bad that they deserved to die? I could not comprehend why anyone in their right mind would want to hurt either one of them. Chapter 8. The victims. The first 2 victims at the front of the store were identified as Michael and Angie Hockensmith, owners of the store and loving parents of Andrew and Naomi. The third victim was 60-year-old Dan Smith, a regular customer of the Hockensmiths, who would routinely buy and sell gold in the area. At first glance, the scene looked like a burglary gone wrong. The Hockensmiths store was indeed a pawn shop, therefore a target of choice for people wanting to steal valuables. However, a crucial piece of evidence didn't make sense with this theory. Dan Smith's suitcase was open on the counter and was still full of money, as was the register. Why wouldn't the robber take some money with him before fleeing? As I continued to process the scene, I discovered that over $1,000 from the cash register was still there. It hadn't been taken. Both Mike and Dan's wallets hadn't been taken. It made me start to think that the victims have been targeted for a reason other than robbery. Chapter 9. Puzzling motives. Detectives were puzzled by the setting of the crime scene. If it wasn't a robbery, then what happened? Were any of them specifically targeted by the killer? Or like what? What do we have here? Dan Smith was a gold buyer. He carried a briefcase with him, with a large amount of cash. Dan Smith's wife was able to tell us that he would do a certain route on certain days of the week. So he goes to his bank, gets the cash, then goes to a pawn shop, buys the gold, and takes it to the refinery. Could he have been the target? If somebody followed him and targeted him, maybe they got spooked because it took so long. The robbery took so long. We don't know. Chapter 10. New leads and suspects. All the while, Andrew's maternal and paternal grandmothers arrived at the police station to support their surviving grandchildren and take them home. All I wanted to do was hold Andrew and Naomi tight, never letting them go, Barbara said. Detectives continued to chase all their leads until one call suggested that they look into Pastor Keith. The preacher was a regular visitor at the Hockensmith's shop. In fact, he had been there the previous night, but he had mentioned something quite odd during a religious retreat, which put the investigators on high alert. Pastor Keith made some suspicious comments about the Hockensmith's murder. Chapter 11. Unexpected turn. Detectives went to Pastor Keith's house to question him about his involvement in the case. The pastor said he was in Danville the morning of the murder, but had left early to pick up a prescription for his wife. He provided a detailed account of his whereabouts, claiming he was at the pharmacy. I have nothing to hide. I was getting medicine for my wife, and I even have a receipt to prove it, Pastor Keith stated confidently. However, the detectives were aware of another piece of evidence. Pastor Keith had once owned the pawn shop. He had lost it due to financial troubles and felt that the Hockensmiths had stolen it from him. I always thought that the shop should have been mine, Pastor Keith had once told a close friend. Chapter 12. Digging deeper. The detectives had a strong motive for Keith, but his alibi needed to be checked. Security footage from the pharmacy confirmed his presence 8 minutes after the murders. It seemed impossible for him to be in two places at once. However, one crucial piece of evidence remained: 9-year-old Andrew. He had seen the killer's face and could potentially identify him. We needed Andrew to help us, the lead detective said. His account was critical. Chapter 13. Andrew's account. Andrew recounted the events of that morning with remarkable clarity. He remembered a man entering the shop, pulling out a gun, and ordering everyone to the ground. The guy came in and pulled out a gun, Andrew said, his voice trembling. He told us to get on the ground. I was so scared. Andrew, his mother, and baby sister hid in a corner, watching as the intruder fired 8 times. Andrew saw his father's last moments. Dad was begging him to stop, Andrew recalled. Then he rolled over and stopped moving. The man then turned to us. Chapter 14. A mother's sacrifice. In a final act of courage, Angie shielded her children. The gunman was getting closer, and Angie knew they had to hide. She whispered to Andrew to take Naomi and hide. Mom told me to take Naomi and hide, Andrew said, tears streaming down his face. I did what she said. I heard more gunshots. Angie Hockensmith was killed while protecting her children. Chapter 15. Unraveling the mystery. The evidence gathered from Andrew's account pointed directly at Pastor Keith. Despite his alibi, the timeline and motive were clear. Keith had a strong motive and the opportunity, the lead detective explained. He thought he could get away with it, but he underestimated Andrew's courage. Pastor Keith was arrested and charged with the murders of Michael, Angie Hockensmith, and Dan Smith. The trial was a harrowing experience for young Andrew, but his testimony was crucial in convicting Pastor Keith. Chapter 16. The Aftermath. The Hockensmith family was shattered, but the town of Danville rallied around Andrew and Naomi, offering support and love. The trial was a grueling process, with the community closely following every development. We couldn't believe someone we trusted could do something so horrible, a community member said, but we knew we had to be there for Andrew and Naomi. Andrew's courage during the trial was nothing short of inspiring. Despite his young age, he stood firm and recounted the events of that tragic day, ensuring that justice was served for his family. Chapter 17. Healing and Resilience. In the years following the trial, Andrew and Naomi were raised by their loving grandparents. The community continued to support them, ensuring they had a stable and nurturing environment. Andrew is a remarkable young man, his grandmother Barbara said. He has shown incredible strength and resilience through everything. As he grew older, Andrew became an advocate for victims of violent crimes, sharing his story to help others heal and find hope. I want people to know that even in the darkest times, there is light, Andrew said. My parents taught me to be strong, and I want to honor their memory by helping others. Chapter 18. Legacy of Love. The story of Andrew Hockensmith is one of loss, bravery, and hope. It is a testament to the enduring strength of a young boy who faced the darkest of times and emerged as a symbol of resilience. We leave you with the memory of Michael and Angie Hockensmith. The narrator concludes, loving parents whose lives were tragically cut short, but whose legacy lives on through their brave son, Andrew. As the credits roll, images of the Hockensmith family fill the screen, a reminder of the love and strength that endures even in the face of unimaginable tragedy.